Aboriginal Acknowledgement right off the bat. And as you see, I was wearing my mask, and I encourage people to continue to wear their mask and abide by the regulations there. Our Dr. Henry has been laying out for us. They've worked so far, and we got to continue staying the course. The vaccine is being rolled out in our community as we speak, and that's a huge step forward, so we're excited about that. Okay, so we would like to acknowledge the land on which we are gathered as a traditional territory of the Tanaha, Silix and Sinix peoples, and is home to Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honor their connection to the lands, rivers, and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. And there are no late items that I'm aware of. I'd like a motion to adopt the agenda to be as presented, please. Councillor Page and Councillor Woodward, all in favour? Thank you very much. Adopt the minutes of the previous meetings. We didn't have any on the here. Recommendation of the Committee of the Whole. There are none. Requests, delegations, bylaws. Recommendation from staff. So in front of us is number 10A, the budget. And as Councillor Renwick mentioned earlier, before we started, we just got this information today, which puts a little bit of a burden on Council to make a decision around these funds that are being requested. However, here we are. So the Nelson Area Economic Development Partnership, Kootenay Association of Science and Technology have requested an opportunity to provide updates to Council on the Innovation Centre. So that's what's in the packets that we have, which we got at our last Committee of the Whole meeting. And with that, I'd like to get Kevin or Colin McClure to please step in and give us a little bit of background on the requests that are being required today for decision.
Yeah,
Just a moment, Colin, before you start, okay. I just want to be clear. Does this decision have to be made today? That's the first thing we need to answer here. Decisions on these funds have to be made today.
Maybe I'll jump in here. Yeah, I think CAS year end is the end of this month, so they would need to know whether they have funding to fund this position. If not, they're going to have to lay someone off. They just don't have funding to continue on until their next fiscal year without this. That's why the urgency around CAS is. As far as the RDI, they're made this proposal probably a month and a half or more ago now. So, and again, they're at the end of their fiscal as well. So they need to know whether they're going ahead or not, or they got students and staffing tied up in doing this study. If we're not going to do it, they need to know. So both of these we can't drag this on for probably any longer than now.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you very much. All right, Colin, you're up.
Yeah, Mayor, and so just to be clear for Council, you have seen this. In fact, some of you've seen a couple times now. So I think part of it is, again, we had hoped, or the plan was, is that we would be able to do this on that the next budget meeting date, and we'd have a more wholesome discussion. But we had discussed some of our opportunities. I think on our last Committee of the Whole meeting, we kind of said, hey, we would really like to, or actually last Council meeting, I should say, that we felt that we needed to move these up, and that's why we penciled in this meeting for today at 4. I think that if the first one, I think, is the NIC, and some of the questions I think that between CAO Cormac and myself was trying to figure out the numbers, trying to understand how we would be able to move forward. We did see that they had provided a number of options, although when we kind of went back and looked at the options themselves, in particular to the final submission that we saw in that meeting with a number of the groups, I think, before our Committee of the Whole back in February, was that 60 was the minimum. But again, when we started to look at it a bit clearer, we said, okay, well, 60 is the minimum, but that was based on having both a full-time project manager and a part-time. And so we knew that there's some other revenues coming into play there. And so mathematically, the CAO and I were sort of struggling with, okay, what is it that they, would truly need if they got these other revenues and you just had that one position in place. And so we felt that in that vein, potentially looking at providing 40,000 as a commitment for now, with the ability for them to look at where things end up, in the sense that if they finish their year end, that would be, our year end is a calendar. So theirs would be on, my understanding anyway, for CAST is that they would be on an April 1st. So they would have 9 months to be able to work through that, but also trying to, at least fortify them to be able to get going. COVID, hopefully with what's happening with the vaccine rollout, would be able to, speed up the idea that we can get back to some sort of normality, and we give them an opportunity, because I think, no one saw COVID coming. And if we didn't have COVID, we'd certainly have a better sense of how successful they could be. That being in play, we've kind of looked at our own budget, and if we were to provide them with about 40, some of the things that we're looking at is there's a couple of softwares that we use now, some of our strategic priority software. We're also looking at thought exchange. At what level do we need them? So would we, take a decrease on some of those softwares, which would assist in providing the funding to go towards NIC? The other thing that I think that we really want to work on, and I'm with you, Mayor, as far as the decision goes, but having a fee for service agreement with them, create a service agreement, so we understand, much like we kind of do in a sense with some of the other partners that we provide funding to understand, what is it that is expected, and how we can report back on it. I don't know if council has any questions on that. This would certainly be a place where my suggestion would be in taking out a surplus, because in the hope is that this would be a declining amount being required going forward. And if anything, hopefully they're on their own 2 feet in a year or so, much like we have other organizations like a destination marketing that's taken some time to get on its feet. We don't want to pull the rug out now, although we are cognizant that we have others in our communities that are hurting as well. But to think that we've invested so much, and whether it's the province or ourselves, and the CIP for the chamber to get the building space up and operating in such a beautiful location, and to not give it the chance seems maybe nearsighted. So some options there, whether or not, again, there's some with maybe a loan. There was a few different things, but that was one that the CEO and I kind of landed on as a starting point. At least they would know that they've got a commitment, lights them kind of light a fire on trying to maybe not get the full amount, but get them going on, making sure they got other funders and getting the thing rolling. So I don't know if there's any questions there.
Yeah, we have Councillor Woodward right off the bat. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Colin. I feel like, this is an organization that did get hit pretty hard with COVID, and it really was this workspace that you can't do that right now. And I feel like, the energy and the passion that went into the creation of that space down in Railtown, there was a lot of vision there, and I do feel like that your idea of 40,000 to keep this energy going and would be good. And I think the vaccine rollout is happening, and really hopefully by the end of this year things would level out and they could get on their feet. So I would be fully in support of the 40,000, and I do think that it's important that we protect the innovation that's already gone into what we've done there. I think it's an important piece of work that's gone in there, and like pulling the rug out now seems not great. So I'm for supporting that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Woodward. So on that note, Councillor Woodward, just for the sake of process here, are you willing to make that a motion?
I am willing to make that a motion. I would move that forward. I need a seconder.
Thank you. Councillor Page, thank you very much. And would you like to speak to that, Councillor Page, now that it's on the floor as a seconder?
Yeah, I'll speak to it for a second. I'm going to start with a question and see what the rest of the table is discussing. I've got 2 of them. The first one being around the thought exchange budgetary side of things. I had sent something off to CEO Cormac about a motion that was moved at the Housing Committee about conducting a thought exchange. Are we cutting back enough that we would not be able to conduct such a thing? We also took that to the NADP, and it was well received there. So are we going to have room to conduct more thought exchanges, or are we cutting that contract completely?
Well, what we're hoping to do is have some discussion. Is there sort of a thought exchange light with not the same levels of support that, that they provide to others? I think they're, becoming a sophisticated user, and, even in the number of times that we're, just capable of using that software in a year. That so that's our hope. The other thing is we could, hold on to it for a couple more months and look at terminating sort of partway through the year to to make those savings. I know internally, we like the software. It's just our capacity and really what's on the books right now as far as planning and those more heavy users isn't kind of where we need it to the same level as we've used it in the past. So I think there's some.
Okay, so it sounds like it's supplemental, if I may.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Colin and Kevin, you guys have come up with this middle ground of 40,000 with a service agreement. Get some clarity around that. Have we talked to CAS? Is this going to help them? This is going to get them through most of the year, but not the whole year. Do we want to hear from the proponent? What is the feedback coming back from the proponent on this number?
Well, it's been last minute, so I just had a quick call. Finally got a hold of Sean 4 minutes before this started. So I didn't have a chance to have that conversation. Other, just trying to understand their budget more. As Colin pointed out, the original budget had 85,000 with staffing with a 60,000 commitment from the city, but there seems to be some confusion around that. I think he still believes that they need a full-time manager for this to be viable. So that would give us, I think the intent would be it would allow them to have that full-time manager and give them whatever 9 months to figure out kind of where this is at, and what that it might be a second ask to finish that year, but hopefully we can generate some of those other revenues that are in that budget, and that's not required. So I think basically our proposal is that's buying some time to to meet that they have a staff in place and they need to make some level of commitment to that person, and buying us enough more time to sort out the details over the rest of the year. But Sean is on here, so this is kind of last minute, but if you guys want to hear from him, there's certainly he agreed to come on to be able to be part of this.
Thanks, Kevin. Any further questions? Councillor Lachtenberg, yes, I see you. Go ahead.
Colin or Kevin, so this $40,000, what are, I need to understand a little bit more about where this money's coming from, and what are we sacrificing to make this happen? There's got to be some sacrifice, because this is not something we would normally do. So what do you see that we're going to have to cut back on?
Yeah, well, and again, Councillor, I think that overall, we kind of alluded to this in a couple of the budget meetings. There is some room, just even based on when we first went into last year's COVID-related budget, that we planned to use a significant amount of our own surplus. And as we roll through this year, excluding kind of the additional provincial COVID restart funding, we look to be not needing to use reserve at all and having a bit of a surplus. So, and that's just on our general operations. So I would say that that's a place that I guess I would feel comfortable the council in tapping into that. Like, you never want to go there all the time, but the idea being that these sort of one-off, not ongoing operations, I mean, that's where you would that's where we would want to pull that funding from. And again, as the CAO Cormac alluded to, some of the areas where we've got some already software in the system that we're maybe not using to its full strength, and if we were to be able to like you said, find a thoughts change light, or what's happening with the strategic priority software. Do we look at have some savings there? So there's a bit of a savings on our operating fund, but also kind of taking a bit of the pressure off the overall with a one-time charge to our surplus would be sort of where we would be looking at on a couple of these requests. Again, that whole being of in nature of kind of that one time, that's a place where when you're making an investment that you might be willing to go there, versus if this was an ongoing every year amount commitment, then we got to find taxation or cutting of other operational services to be able to have an ongoing funding source.
Supplemental, if I may.
Certainly, yeah.
Go ahead.
So what I'm hearing is that that surplus would otherwise go to the bottom line, i.e., reducing the pressure on a tax raise, or it would be diverted from other strategic priorities. And of course, I'm always coming back to Nelson Next and some of the inevitable projects that we need to fund there. I was hoping to see, and I've said this probably from the beginning when the NIC first presented back in 2018, I think, that I wanted to see more from the NIC to focus on delivering benefit to the city, because the traditional role of developing an innovation ecosystem for the purposes of economic development, I don't think applies anymore, because we almost have to bat people away. Now that we've really demonstrated through this COVID the ability for remote workers to be as productive or more productive to work from home or work remotely. I personally know a number of people coming from the Lower Mainland and from other jurisdictions working in tech, not even traditional software tech, but just tech in general, are finding Nelson a really attractive place to come to. So I just really wanted to emphasize, I know Sean's here, this is really underwhelming what I'm seeing here. Like it feels like this would have been relevant in 2016 when that initial study was done, but post-COVID and given what's happened in terms of the tech community here in the last number of years, it just seems like we need to look at a more solution-based approach. So I would really want to see and underline, what is the NIC doing for the Nelson strategic priorities beyond economic development? Since that, to me, I think that's just a wash. What is it going to do for Nelson Next? What is it going to do for maybe even in some of the other sectors that we really want to develop, like affordable housing and that kind of thing? I think there's tons of room and need for innovation, just to generally create an innovation ecosystem. Hard to see the ROI for taxpayers. So I just struggling with this one.
So those are the types of questions I think that can be put forward as we move forward with this, with Sean, and I agree with you wholeheartedly that that's a conversation that we should be having. Here's some of the direction. We wouldn't want to be pulling the levers, but there should be some commitment to being innovative and expanding the model, other than just having a facility that people can show up to use on a rare occasion. Councillor Page?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Lautenberg. I was sitting in the same box as you, I think a couple months ago, when these asks were starting to come in terms of the value delivered by this work hub space and the closure and what it's going to look like in the future. I've had the opportunity most recently to attend the GLOW's STEM for Women virtual conference that was put on by the NIC and the programming staff there. Was last week, and which is really quite excellent for young youth and women looking to get into STEM and STEM related civic engineering. It was quite an amazing platform. And I want to look back to the backgrounder that was provided by Ms. Wilkie on the NAADP's value. Like I know we want to derive value from our strategic priorities, but I think we also want to look to what the NAADP is doing and how we're bringing forth that economic development activity inside of our strategic plan as a district, right? Like I think CAS being a regional programming provider and the NAADP having done the feasibility study and the body that we support to identify these priorities. I think this is one of those places, especially during COVID and with the funds coming from Restart and the ability to have some wiggle room, that we really, I think we do want to at least get us to the other side of this particular pandemic. But I would also look to what that service agreement has and how that service agreement ties back into what the NADP is trying to accomplish. But I think, to your point, really looking to how our strategic priorities tie back into the NADP for the major contribution that we make there, which will be, the whole set of conversations we're about to have, because the ask coming from them for that feasibility for arts, culture, and heritage. So I hope there's, support for this group. I'm supporting this ask, especially with the constraints that staff have considered to get them through at least this budgetary year, and potentially evaluating if they need a little top up at the end of the year. But for me, and it's odd because it's not about the physical space, but it's about those people that are providing that programming, because I've just been blown away by what they're doing lately in the last couple months for young women and STEM and science and technology. Like, I think those are going to be the innovators, and I think we do want to keep that regional lens on for them. So we have a big part to play, but we have to let them play their part too, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does, actually. I agree with you. It's I think it's not the right time to be splitting hairs on this particular group, because they just got their feet on the ground and the Titanic hit them right between the eyes, and they need a chance to succeed. But there's no question there's an opportunity for discussion going forward. And I think Sean made that quite clear in his presentation too, that, just going forward, they're more than happy to have that conversation. And if we're one of the funders, we should be part of the what's happening down there for sure. If they don't want us sticking our nose in, then find somebody else to fund it. That's what I always say. But there was one other question I had here, and Councillor Page mentioned it just now, that this is a regional initiative. Is there an outside chance there may be an opportunity to leverage ENF, our partners in the Economic Development Partnership Program, to leverage that extra 20 grand that they originally asked for in the first place? It just seems to me we have two asks here that don't include either one of our partners that are already currently participating in these two functions.
I think that's definitely an ask. I think the other one, I know Colin pointed out, especially some of the smaller munis that did get quite a bit of COVID funding and maybe struggling a bit with how do they actually use it. Maybe there's an opportunity to really engage some of those smaller communities that, in terms of getting some direct service to some of those residents in their communities that now can participate, because a lot of this is delivered online, where before it was harder for them to participate. So Colin, I don't know what your thoughts of the Salmos and Silvertons and maybe Nakusps and those size communities that really don't have a lot of those support in their own communities, and can they maybe they become part of this larger delivery, and it's the NIC, but it's as Councillor Page said, it doesn't matter where you are, and in our region, that you can access that type of training and get value, and you don't have to come to Nelson, or there's even the other there's the Kootenay boundary, there's the Roslins and the trails and those other communities that give us that opportunity to really turn something into a regional, truly a regional delivery, and it's the NAC's the home of it, but it really becomes more of a regional focus, and certainly that's CAS mandate, and yeah, there is that COVID funding that maybe people can risk a little bit and see that they can find some value, and maybe make sense for them to be part of this ongoing.
Councillor Renwick, last kick at the cat.
Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, I'm agreeing with, I think I'm kind of agreeing with everybody a little bit. I guess my biggest thing is that I think we really need to work with the Innovation Center, and I think the message should be loud and clear that eventually they need to pretty much stand on their own 2 feet. And, you know, we should help them along that way. I agree with some of what Rick has to say as well, but they do need a hand right now, but you know, maybe next year if they can get things up and rolling and a membership or something like that, so that when they come back next year and the year after, the ask is going down, not upwards.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to call the question, and Sarah, could you please give us the wording of the motion again so everybody's clear?
That council approve the amount of $40,000 to NIC, subject to a fee-for-service agreement be in place.
Okay, we had a mover and a seconder. All in favor?
And if I could, before you
sorry,
just finish
Colin.
that, oh, sorry, could I just maybe request, and that would come from surplus?
Okay, yep.
Okay, you got that?
Yeah.
All right, all in favor? Thanks, Colin. Carried. Thanks very much. Onward and upward. Next is the study for the arts and culture study. And once again, we have a package that you got here. And again, this is somewhat time sensitive as well, since the college is involved in it, and Kevin gave us a bit of an outline on the availability of the students, etc. And of course, the need to move forward with this. You know, at this good a time as any, the industry's in a bit of a flux at the moment, to say the least. And it'd be interesting to see what people have to say that are involved in the industry and those that benefit from it as well going forward. So I'm not going to tell them how to do the study, but somebody needs to speak up here and move a motion to get this on the floor. And we have Councillor Woodward again, and a bit like Santa Claus today there, Councillor Woodward, and Councillor Renwick. So did you want to speak, Councillor Woodward? And Councillor Renwick, you'd
Sure.
be next if you wish.
Sure. Councillor Renwick, do you want to speak first? Okay. Yeah, I think, thank you, Mayor. I think I mean, we all know the absolute deep value of arts and culture in our town, considering we're considered an arts and culture town. And, you know, COVID has been devastating, to say it lightly. I mean, it's been really, really, really hard on this industry. And I think, you know, getting a kind of a foundational level understanding of where we're at, especially considering the last study was done in, I think it was 2003. And you know, a lot has changed since then. So I feel like it would be a really good peek into where we're at. As you said, Mayor, I think it would be really curious to know where the general public is at with arts and culture. What are they doing? How are they consuming it? What are they looking for? And, you know, how can revenue streams be developed out of that information? I think, as you said too, Mayor, that, you know, the technologies are changing, and so people's consumer habits are changing too. So, you know, how is that fluxing and flowing in this industry? I'm super curious. I think it would be really good for our town as a whole to understand what's happening. So I'm definitely in agreement with this, getting this report done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Renwick, did you wish to speak?
I couldn't agree more, Jesse. And I just, yeah, I think a peek into what's going on, and as you've said, you know, they've been devastated. And if this helps us help them in some way, shape, or form, you know, I think we've done our part and continue to do our part for the business community as much as we can. And you know, these people are really struggling, and I wholeheartedly agree with this. Thank you.
Councillor Page.
Before this cat gets too bruised, I'll give it another kick. One of the interesting opportunities I think we have here is much like with what happened with the water metering, is you have this place where there is nearly no activity going on or the shift in activity. So I think it's really important to get down the data of what it looks like. So as we're scaling back up into normal procedures, we have an idea of what that differential looks like. Because we've got the Selkirk going on, because we've got this identified as a priority from the NADP, and that work has already been done, and they've been laid out very nicely for us. Yes, I want to see us support this, get that cash flowing, and get that laid down, because when it does come in, it's going to be informing a bunch of different kinds of asks, I think, in our community. And we're seeing that pivoting going on now, but I think how important that community has been to the economy in this area. I want to have this piece finished so that we know exactly where we're targeting our investments come fall. So the sooner we're on it, the sooner those guys are working on it, the better in my mind.
Yeah, and there's the whole social impact as well that, of course, the study probably won't. Now, and keeping in mind, when I read through the package, it's not as in depth as the last one that was done in '95. So that's in your package. The other thing that was loud and clear in this as well, and I thought it should be taken into account, was the geographical scope of this project includes the City of Nelson, areas E and F, and it probably should include area H. It's a rare occasion that you see a band at one of our local establishments that doesn't have somebody from the Slocan Valley in it, or an artist that's involved in our Market Fest or our farmers market, etc. So I'm just wondering if that's something that we should be maybe talking about and reaching out to our partners once again to be full participants in this study going forward. This is, I'm not suggesting we should dole out more money here, but this is really not a lot of, this is not going to get us a really deep dive into this sector at this point in time. 29,000 is going to be more of a surface sort of exploratory model, but at the same time, I really think we should maybe speak with Director Popoff as well as Director Faust and the area directors to get them involved in this at potentially part of this 29 grand, or maybe should there be another future ask to expand this to look at a more in-depth study, that they would be equal or willing participants.
Yeah, we can certainly do that, and maybe we'll also reach out to the CBT and maybe they'll come on board as well. The other thing to keep in mind with Selkirk being able to basically leverage grants for those students, so that what we're paying the college is not the full labor that we're getting towards this project. I think the students tend to be, I know in the last one we were about 50% of actually what the contribution was through the grants that you can get for students.
Yeah, I would.
So one other thing. Oh.
Sorry, go ahead, Colin, and then Councillor.
Sorry, just to in conversation with the CAO and I having is keeping the budget as is, but the expectation here is that we would likely, or the idea here is that the city would make agreement between the RDI Selkirk and ourselves, and then we would decide on who would lead this particular program. So a little bit of a different animal in how it was maybe presented in the document, but just trying to understand in our review, and again too with the different questions on that way we would know, dealing with Selkirk, here's what we're looking for, here's the city, we deal with that component. I think as CO Cormac alluded to, whether or not we can get some other partners involved, but CBT is also to get something maybe a bit more robust. But I think just even in the starting point of Selkirk understanding that we're committed to this and that we would sign that agreement with them, and like I said, and then figure out in the back end here who would lead this.
Thank you. Councillor Page.
I think I'm probably speaking to the informed already, but the two things that pop up here is, I don't know if anyone's had a chance to review the preliminary results coming out of Campbell Field, but to your point about Area H, there, Julie, is the top priority that came across from all of those surveyed was attending performances at that space. That came through again and again, and all the respondents from all the communities was of that recreational outreach was, I will attend a performance at this location. So, which is, I think a surprising response, that it was the number one, again and again, number one thing people wanted to do. So people are ready to get back out there and do things in general. The other thing was the CIDIT economic development. I can't remember the name of it now, and it's on a tight timeline. I think it's got to be in by the end of the month or something, but they've got upwards of $50,000, I think, for communities under 20,000 for exactly feasibility studies, business sector development. I think if we can firmly put our foot in and say, yes, we're going ahead, then that's probably another place that we can find some cash if that's the priority the community wants to take. But it's definitely within the call out that they're providing. But I think, Kevin, you probably have already seen that, but for council's benefit.
Thank you.
I do think it needs to be more robust.
Yeah, I agree. I think going forward it'll have to be, because, 3 of our major events in our area is the Shambhala, the Caslo Jazz Festival, and the Starbelly Jam event over in Crawford Bay. So it takes in that quite a large geographical area that's not identified in here, and maybe going forward, Sydney, I know you're listening and watching. Going forward, I got a feeling that through this process you're going to find out, well, why isn't somebody asking us going forward? So this could turn out to be bigger than what it shows on paper today, but it's a very good starting point for us all to get a feel for where we're at the moment, and then maybe expand it beyond that in the future. So, all right, thank you. Oh, Sydney, yeah. I'm going to give you a bit of leeway here to speak, but just keep it as short as you can, because it's mainly a council event, okay? So.
Oh, yeah, very, very snappy. I just wanted to say that we are having conversations with other organizations that have vested interests in the East Shore as well. And so we are looking at finding additional partners to work with on this. So, and that CIDIT grant is very much on our radar. And so, yeah, we are already looking at all those options. So just rest assured that, yeah, it would be great to extend the scope. We had preliminary conversations with CBT, but I think it would be great if the city were to have another conversation with them around them potentially supporting us. I think that would be very, very helpful. So if anyone would like me to attend any other meetings to support it, I'm very happy to do so. And thank you for your support and acknowledging that this is so important.
Thanks very much.
Sydney, just wondering, did you have any chance to speak with the other areas and around us as well?
No, we haven't. We didn't get to that point yet. We had talked about doing it on a massive scope, and we had initially gone to Columbia Basin Trust, and they had said that it was beyond what they were looking at doing for COVID support at that time. But that was also maybe 6 months ago. So I think that there could be room to have another conversation. It was before we had any vested interest from the municipality or anyone else. So I think that now, if this moves forward, we'll have a lot more basis to have conversations with them about it being important.
Okay, thanks very much. All right, so on that note, I'll call the question, and the motion was, Sarah, just to be clear?
Just to be clear, and Colin, will this also come from surplus?
That would be my direction, yes.
Okay. So the resolution reads that council support the arts and culture economic impact study to be undertaken by RDI in the amount of $30,000 to come from surplus.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you, Sarah. All in favor? Thanks very much. Carried. We're done? We're done. Motion to adjourn the meeting, please. Kevin?
I thought I'd just give a quick update, because the other one that was started on your plate was KSA, and I did have a conversation with Carrie Clark today.
Kevin, is this a closed event conversation, is it?
No.
For the open meeting?
Yeah, just in terms of the I guess the open part is, the lease payment that they have with the city, that they're going to go ahead and pay that lease payment for this for 2020, and so that takes off some pressure on the council's budget as well. And for others, it was just that we had this $1 lease with with KSA from back in the past, and that after 25 years, it's now turned into our normal 8% return on that land. So that's some additional funding that was new to the city, so that takes a bit of budget pressure off as well.
Thanks very much, Cal. Okay, motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Page and Councillor Renwick's, they're going to dock that cruise ship of his any moment, so he wants to get out. All in favor?